my name is Sam. Thanks for checking out this video. If you get to the end and liked it, then subscribe, thumbs up, bell notification, yada yada yada. I hope the video quality is okay. It's a very gray weekend, as you can tell from Watson's grunt, snoring, and depression, and wanting attention. Anyways, I wanted to talk about the books that I read this week. It should be actually a relatively shortish video on this one, I think. And you will see why in a couple seconds. So, yeah. So this is actually the last book that I read this week, but I tried reading Aurora Rising, and I'm kind of mind-boggled because Illuminae is a book a series I adore, and I love all of J. Kristoff's stuff that I've read, and I really enjoyed Amy Kaufman's solo stuff that I've read. So, I DNF'd Aurora Rising. It was just not in any... I was so bored. None of the development that was in Illuminae, which I'm automatically just like, I tried to keep them different, but it wasn't because like, oh, the story wasn't the same as Illuminae. It's going to be different. I just found myself bored. None of the characters were interesting to me, and it just, it was lots of stuff missing that would, you know, make it like this big sci-fi thing for me. And also shout out to my library system for whoever cataloged this, because they laminate and then tape the covers onto them. So that's the cover, and this is upside down and backwards. So I have to tell someone when I return the book to the library. Oh boy, yeah. And I was like, maybe it's just a weird, weird formatting they went with. No, it definitely is. This is, you can see like Aurora Rising, the title pages, and that is upside down, back of the cover. And the rest of this week, I worked on the Queens of Ren PF Quartet, and I actually finished it. I'm assuming this is like, they're just leaving it as like the spin-off novella and not doing any more, I think. And so like, just as a series as a whole, I enjoy these. Like, so there's like, the first one is the Queen of the Blood, then the Reluctant Queen, and then the Queen of Sorrow, and then there was this one. And I was like, oh, it's a weird change. But if they're like tales or whatever, maybe they want to just make sure people understand it's a different thing. But it's not like a bound up of a bunch of tales. It's like a full story again of just another queen in this world. So I'm confused as to why they changed the covers to not match this. That just seemed like a very weird choice that I don't totally comprehend, and it doesn't make sense to do it to the fourth book in this quartet. And like the series itself was never massively wide selling, so I can't comprehend the logic that went into this. But anyways, it is pretty. It just doesn't match. It doesn't make sense to me. So the Queen of Blood was a reread for me. So it follows our main character who chooses, she has control over the spirits in this world, where the spirits are like attached to nature. So they're spirits for like wood and like water and all that stuff, and they're psychotic, and they simultaneously want to kill the entire population of humans living, and then they also want to be ruled by the queen. So the current queen is looking for heirs, so they always have an heir in place. Not biological heir, like an heir that's won their position. They always have an heir in place so that when they die, the spirits will all of a sudden go loose until the new queen takes over, right? So to avoid as least amount of chaos, they have an heir ready. So our main character goes to a school and trains, and then gets recruited by a champion in order to go train in the real world to eventually become an heir. She's definitely not the most powerful of the people in the school, but she is aware of that, and she tries... Oh, bless her. She tries really, really hard. And everything that's going on with the existing queen starts slowly unraveling, and we see, you know, maybe she doesn't have as much control over everything as she thought she did, and why are there being random spirits attacks in different geographic areas that no one's talking about. Like, people are getting killed, and you're supposed to be there to protect them. What is happening? So our main character in here, I want to make sure I get her name right, because the names are kind of like a little weird. Does it specify her name? I think it's Maricot. I'm not 100% sure. I think it's Maricot. We'll say it's Maricot is Queen of the Blood main character. This was also a reread for me. This switches, our Maricot is still in this, but we switch from her position of power, and we kind of pivot to, we now need a new heir after heirs, because you normally have multiples. They need more heirs after everything that happened in Queen of Blood. So our champion from the first book goes and starts searching for someone else. For whatever his reasons are in his background, he decides, rather than like recruiting kids to the school the way he did last time, he wants to go find someone that maybe has untapped potential that didn't want to be part of the heirdom or was overlooked, whatever the case may be, and that is where we have a new character step in. So we still have Maricot doing her thing. Okay, I think I figured it out in my brain. Delena is Queen of Blood, so the book I just talked about, not Maricot. Maricot is Queen of Sorrows, okay, but she is in the first book. Not as main POV. The main POV in the first book is Delena, and then the Reluctant Queen is Naylin, I think is how you say it. Yes. Okay, so Delena, Naylin, and Maricot in those order. So Delena is Queen of Blood, Reluctant Queen is Delena, and the third book is Maricot. I hope I said that right. Anyways, so we still have Delena doing her thing, but we focus on Naylina, and she's a rather interesting, I feel like just because I read a lot of YA, it's always interesting where they're like, I'm going to go find a grown adult and bring them into the plot and have them the main POV and have them like be a responsible human. And so she's a reluctant queen, as you can guess from the title, that she has power and a lot of it, but she never wanted to use it for whatever, because of, it's kind of explained in the first book, it comes with a lot of responsibility being an heir, and protecting the world from all these spirits. So she's decided she doesn't want any of that. She wanted to stay in her small village, and she loves her 2 kids. Her marriage is kind of crumbling, but she loves her 2 kids, and she just wants to protect them, and that's her goal. She's happy with those children. She loves being a mother, and just living where she's living. That gets upended very quickly. And then there's this like big blow up at the end, which results in needing book 3. The Queen of Sorrow brings in a neighboring kingdom, and Maricot, who is in the first book as the friend of the queen, and, you know, perspectives, I guess, you know, point of views have changed. Maricot was always, even the first book, a notoriously powerful person, so there's always the concern, kind of throughout the whole series, of, like, power grabs and hunger, and that's when this comes into play. I love this series as a whole, like the original trilogy here. I really love the emphasis, and honestly, actually, even the novella thing that I'll talk about, well, I guess it's not a novella, the side tales, whatever we're calling it. I love that the focus is very heavily on the relationships within families, the relationships as a whole, but like, especially seems to be parental with children. Even in the Queen of Blood and the Queen of Sorrows, there's people that have kind of parental relationships with people, even though they're not blood parent child, right? You know what I mean? And the roles that they play, and the influences they can have when they're good relationships versus bad relationships, depending on the people. So I really love that, even though there is a plot going on throughout this, it's saving the kingdoms and exactly figuring out what the heck we need to do with the spirits if they're running rampant. And everything, that everyone has their own origin stories of the spirits, which I thought was really interesting, because we do that in our world. So I just thoroughly enjoyed this series. I think the first book was a little bit clunky for me, but it just gets better with each book. It really does, as the cast builds, and I love that we got to explore more of the world as we go on. We're exploring new village communities, we're exploring more of the spirit realm, and then we're exploring a neighboring kingdom, which was something I wondered about in the first book, of like, does she rule like the whole planet, or like, so in the end I think I gave like Queen of Blood like a 3.5, 4 out of 5 stars, and then the Reluctant and the Queen of Sorrows both like somewhere between a 4.5 out of 5 stars. I really enjoy that series. That is one that I think I'm going to continuously every once in a while come back to, and because the spirits are really complex, like their whole like kind of arc through this whole thing, and their story and their origin and their purpose, I feel like it's one that I'm going to forget every couple months, and then I can come back and be like, oh, I totally don't remember any of this. So I'm really happy that I own that series. And then I read the side novellas. It's in the same world as Queens of Renthia. I had a difficult time trying to pinpoint if it's in the future or the past. I kind of got the impression it was past, and that this influenced how the existing Queens of Renthia world developed into what it did with the original trilogy there. So I thought it was a bind up because I just totally just didn't read like the Goodreads page properly. I thought it was like a combination of multiple stories, the way that like Language of Thorns for the Shadow and Bone series was. It's not. It's its whole own story in the same world with the spirits, and it's just a slightly different setup that how people pick heirs and the silent, and it's a different geography as well. It's sort of this island country, and then there's this whole thing of in the original series, the queens are pretty, like, they have a lot of power, and they kind of make all the decisions for the most part. It's definitely a monarchy. Whereas this one, the queen is selected, but she's strong-held and blackmailed, and basically all of the queens in this book, that she's put into the position kind of in a very weird way that's gone over, and then all of a sudden her daughter and her husband are kidnapped, and she's told that she has to do what these royal families say, or they'll kill her children, or her family. So she doesn't have any control over this, and then there's this sort of like Lord of the Flies, Hunger Games situation that they throw the people on an island, whoever kind of survives the island for a month while the spirits are trying to kill them, get to become heirs. And our main character, again, it's this relationship of her family. It all starts when she gets married to her childhood sweetheart on that day at their wedding day, and her powers are exposed. And in this world, which is why I think it's a history rather than the future of the Renthia world, that if you had powers, like the spirits and the government and whoever came to find you. They sensed it, they came to find you, and you had to go and either become a part of the silent, or a part of the heirs. I feel like I still don't totally comprehend the difference between those two roles. It's kind of explained, but I don't think it like as clearly as it could have been. So our main character hides that until there's an attack on her wedding, and she's trying to figure out why exactly was this attack happen? We have a queen for literally the purpose of protecting us, and we have all these people. And so she has to decide if she wants to go into the silent or the heir. And yeah, it's just that whole thing. I love the relationship between her and her husband. I love that. I love the relationship between her and her sister, and her parents and her in-laws. I think the world was quite a bit more interesting because it is on a coastline, whereas the other thing is very much like a landlocked geography with some mountains and stuff. This has the added elements with being like on isolated islands and even just coastal communities in general. So I actually found this really interesting. I'd be curious to see if they would expand this into a trilogy. I think it has potential. I think the spirits are a little bit different here. They're which I think makes sense because it's a different time period, so they would change. But I think it's interesting that they still have this kind of thing the whole time, that no one really knows how to deal with the spirits, control the spirits, are we always living in fear, that whole thing. So in the end, 5 out of 5 stars. I really enjoyed this as a side, whatever the heck this thing was. So those are all the books that I read this week. Let me know in the comment section down below what you read this week. I'd love to know. And if you've read any of these, I would also love to know. I apologize for the name mix-up. They're very weird names, and they're different POVs each book. But yeah, I will link all of these books in the description box down below. I will also link all of my social media. If you follow me, I will follow you back, and I will see you on Tuesday with my December TBR.